Right. Welcome, everyone. This is a Brain Northwest educational class. Today we have Caterina Turner, who's going to be presenting on Calm Within the Chaos, Reactivity, Irritability, and Neurofatigue. We are fortunate that Caterina has taught many classes for us and comes with a wealth of experience working in a case management space and supportive space with a lot of brain injury survivors over the course of her career and closely connected with the veteran community as well in her personal and professional life. So, Katerina, I'm so glad, as always, to get to host you today and to learn again alongside all of you. Um, and just as a reminder, you will get a copy of these beautiful slides, a transcript, and any other tidbits that are come up in class maybe or afterwards in the follow-up email. So please, make yourselves comfortable, make yourselves at home, and let's enjoy learning together. Thank you. Go ahead, Katerina.
Thank you, Reggie. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Caterina, and you are at the class Calm Within the Chaos. I am not sure what it cost you to be here today or the energy that it took to log on. Really the things you set aside or even what you push through to show up. Some of you may already be running low, depending upon where you're at here on the East Coast. It's 5 o'clock here, but if you're on the Pacific, probably hitting that 2 o'clock dip. So thank you for choosing to spend some time with the energy that you have here today. Before we do anything else, I invite you all to take a breath. And this is kind of a reminder to myself as well. So I appreciate you sitting in with this for me. So over the next 30 to 40-ish minutes, depending upon how quickly my brain or my mouth works through this training, we're going to be addressing neurofatigue, what it is, why it happens, and why it goes so far beyond feeling tired. We're going to take a look at, what's happening inside your brain, give you some strategies that you can use. Some of you may be already familiar with these strategies. So this might be a refresher course, and if not, hopefully I'm able to give you something that's a little bit nuanced. I want you to think of this class as you're sitting down with a friend who's spent a lot of time with the research, a lot of time speaking to providers, and a wealth of time in the brain injury community supporting you guys. So let's go ahead and get into it. So this kind of tired is very different. Different than, say, someone neurotypical like myself, where it's like, man, I've had a really rough, long day. This is fundamentally, structurally different from the tiredness that most people understand. Regular fatigue, it makes sense. You do a lot throughout the day, you get tired, you sleep, you wake up feeling energized and refreshed. And there's a little bit of logic to it. But this doesn't follow those rules. You can get 10 hours of sleep and wake up feeling like maybe you haven't slept in days, or you can have a quiet morning, make some breakfast, watch something, have a phone call, and by noon, your body feels almost like it was filled with wet sand, or your brain has just kind of checked out for the day. You try to read something, or you go to a restaurant, you're trying to figure out what to eat, and it's just kind of like staring at a blank page where nothing is really registering. And it ebbs and it flows. And then your partner says one thing, and then maybe the frustration comes out in a way that you did not intend for it to. And it might take you back. So this kind of tired is called neurofatigue. And the reason it doesn't follow the rules of regular tiredness is that, it's not coming from your muscles of a long day. It's coming up from your brain, of course, and it shows up in various areas. So it can show up cognitively with fog, whether that's with word finding trouble. I walked into this room and I have absolutely no idea why I came in here, which is pretty typical for someone, again, like myself, neurotypical, but it may happen more so with neurofatigue. Physically, again, heaviness in your body, headache, sensitivity to light and sound. Perhaps, a crowded room sounds like you're inside of a drum. And then emotionally. This is one that I hear all the time is irritability. Irritability that doesn't match the moment. So it could be something along the lines of a fuse so short that you can feel it burning before the match is even lit. So those three things, the fog, the heaviness, the short fuse, they're not set apart. They're three separate problems, but it's your brain sending the same signal through different channels. So if this fatigue is so different from regular tiredness, what's happening? So I'll just walk you through it a little bit. And if science isn't your thing, that's completely fine. I try to make it as digestible as possible, just so you have a little bit of an idea of kind of what's happening. So you have two parts of your brain that work together. Deep inside, there's a small structure called the amygdala, or the smoke detector, as I call it. It does an incredible job all day long, scanning your environment, every sound, every face, every flicker of moment. It could be an inflection in someone's voice, making that split-second assessment. Is this dangerous? Am I safe? And it does this, in milliseconds. If a car swerves into your lane and you don't want your brain to write out a pros and cons list, you want the smoke detector kind of yanking your hands on the wheel before you've even registered what's happened. So, right up front behind your forehead is your prefrontal cortex. And I think of this as the steady hand. When the smoke detector fires, the steady hand steps in and says, okay, I hear the alarm. Let me take a look. Let me see what's going on. So it's more like the rational one. Amygdala is kind of everything's up in flames all the time. It's keeping you safe. And then the steady hand is more so, is there a fire or did someone just burn the toast? Is this kind of the reaction that you should be having, or do we need to maybe take a step back? So the steady hand gives you that ability to pause, consider, and choose how you respond instead of reacting. So when those two are in communication, I'd like to think of it as like two musicians who've really just kind of jammed out their whole lives together. They're very in tune, they're very in sync, they work together seamlessly, and you would never even notice that they're looking at sheet music. They've memorized everything. Everything's smooth sailing. After a brain injury, that duet gets harder to play, and the connection develops this lag. So think about being on a phone call and there's maybe a half-second delay where, you keep trying to talk to each other, but it's kind of off. That signal that traveled instantly is now taking a little bit longer and sometimes drops out entirely. But even if that signal gets through, the steady hand is already stretched to the limit. So think about what your prefrontal cortex is doing right now. You're processing my voice. You might be looking at the different faces on the screen. What are they doing? What's in their living room? All of these different things to process, kind of what's going on. So really holding your attention is one thing. And before the injury, most of that ran in the background seamlessly. After the injury, every single one of those processes moves to the foreground and requires active, conscious effort. And your brain is kind of hand cranking systems that used to be automatic. So think about what that means kind of in your daily life. So taking it from this clinical lens of prefrontal cortex, amygdala language, which I do hate to use. I like thinking about this in your real life and real context. So what does this mean in a crowded grocery store? The lights, the music. I know I'm always talking about fluorescent lights. Just something about those darn fluorescent lights just really get me. So fluorescent lights, the choices. What am I having for dinner? Did I bring my meal plan? I don't remember. Let me just throw all these things in my cart. Am I within my budget? A kiddo is crying 3 aisles over. And I'm sure even me just saying all of this is kind of getting your nervous system revved up because I know it does for me. This is just, again, your brain just processing all of these things. So the smoke detector fires, which it does constantly because the world is full of input. And that steady hand is occupied because it's working harder. So nobody's really available to check the alarm and say, okay, Caterina, it's just toast. It's fine. Like there's no fire. the reaction may come out a little bit bigger and faster than that moment called for. And then up here, you'll see chemical clutter, glutamate buildup, which again, I try to refrain from, the clinical terms, but I thought that this was important to include because sometimes there's a brain messenger called glutamate, and glutamate isn't the villain. It helps your neurons to fire. So it's a part of thinking, learning, speaking, moving, all of it. And normally your brain releases glutamate in tiny moments to support the cells. They clear it and they recycle it quickly, and it's kind of like a well run kitchen. There we go. So the plates are moving, the counters are getting wiped down, and the system stays smooth. And in some cases, after brain injury, especially if you had a lot of inflammation and depending upon the mechanism of your injury, you could have increased inflammation or poor sleep or high stress, and that system can lose some of its buffer. So, not always because the glutamate is building up, but because the brain can kind of get stuck in that revved state and it takes longer to get back to baseline. So, thinking takes more effort, filtering noise takes more effort, emotion regulation takes more effort. And when your brain is spending that kind of energy just to stay stable, fatigue and irritability show up together because they're coming from the same place, which is your nervous system just working harder than people can see. And they travel together. So because they're the same process showing up in different ways, it's kind of like the cyclical event. The fatigue lowers your threshold. The lower threshold makes you more reactive. And the reactivity burns through whatever energy you had left. So the rest of this training is really about how to interrupt that cycle. There is a lot of doom and gloom conversation there about what's going on and why it's so hard. But with intentionality and with tools built around how to support your day, you should be able to calm the amygdala and have that hand come up a little bit more to give you that extra pause. So, have you ever had one of those really good days? Like, I mean, a good day where you wake up and you feel so energized, like this was the best sleep of my life. Maybe that hasn't been for some of you recently. But you open your eyes, something feels different. The fog is a little bit lighter, you have more energy, and you're like, I need to leverage this day. I'm feeling so good. So you do. You go to the store, you tackle all of your laundry, the kitchen. You make those phone calls. Maybe you say yes to seeing a friend that you've kind of been bailing out on, and it feels glorious. And you feel like, yes, like, I'm there. Like, I know, like, I'm on the up and up. And then the next morning arrives and you feel offline again. You feel, gosh, like you're so sluggish to get out of bed. Like, wow, did I get hit by a truck? What's going on? I had all this energy yesterday. So it's really difficult to navigate. And especially for those loved ones in your lives where it's like, okay, Caterina, you were so energetic yesterday. What happened? What's the change between, you being so full of energy yesterday, but today, where is that energy? So you pay for tomorrow's push, or excuse me, you pay for today's energy with tomorrow's crash. And that's what makes it so painful is it wasn't a bad decision. It was your instinct to use that energy and to feel like yourself and to grab onto that window. But the problem is when you're in that revved up state, as we discussed, it takes some time to settle. And then the bill shows up 12 to 36 hours later when you can't connect it to the thing that caused it. So here are the 4 Ps of energy conservation. And again, some of you may be familiar with this from occupational therapy or rehabilitation research. So if, again, you're familiar, this may be a refresher. Prioritize. So figuring out what matters today with the energy that you have, spending on what matters, planning, setting up your week so you're not bleeding energy on decisions all day. And then that way you can decide before you're tired. Pacing, learning to stop when you still have something left. So say you feel like, oh, I've got a little bit of juice left. I can, go take the dog on that walk, or I can go to the gym, or maybe I can make that phone call to a family member. Just really trying not to max yourself out for the day. And then positioning. So arranging your body in a space that isn't going to cost you, making the environment do the work for you to where, say for instance, you're on the phone and you like to pace. Maybe you get a little bit nervous and, maybe just taking that call while you're sitting down. So just really setting up your environment and managing a limited budget. So again, your brain uses a huge part of your body's energy. And after injury, more of your available capacity gets diverted into healing, rerouting, regulation. So the same day costs more than it used to. The repair work runs 24 hours a day. You can see it, you can feel it happening, and you can't speed it up. It's just always on, which means every morning you're starting with meaningfully less available energy than the people around you before your feet even hit the floor. So this is something to be mindful of, especially, with your partner and trying to keep up with their pace. And again, not having to over explain, but just having a conversation around acknowledgement of my pace is very different now. This is what this looks like, um, rather than just trying to grind through. So, of course, you know, you have obligations, you have priorities, a medical appointment, picking up your kiddos. These are things that obviously have to happen, but pacing yourself around them so you don't do three other big things that day. Some things matter, but the rest can wait depending on the window. So your hobby, the phone call, those get your freshest energy. And when that energy is the most for you is going to vary. So for myself, I know it is early morning. I'm good to go until about 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock, I'm juiced out, I'm maxed out for the day, and I leave that the rest of my energy for the next day to keep that steady baseline. So be specific. Your loved ones want to help you, but sometimes they don't know how or they don't want to overstep. You can say something along the lines of, can you handle the dishes tonight? Can you make this phone call for us for this appointment? And of course, you want to keep your agency, and I understand that. But for the things where it's like, you can outsource these things, just again to preserve that energy. And then down here, there's the not today. So get comfortable with this one. Not today doesn't mean not ever. It just means you're going to put it off. Your energy matters more than a perfectly organized closet or an empty inbox. And I'm specifically saying closet because I've been putting off cleaning that closet. So again, just managing your cognitive load and what you can do and what matters, and not guilting yourself if you're unable to keep up with the energy level that you previously had. I'm a big advocate for reducing the mental load. A hidden energy drain that most people don't talk about is deciding and decision fatigue, coupled with neurofatigue is atrocious. So really every decision you make, what to eat, when to shower, whether you want to answer that text, how to answer the text, which errand to run first, pulls from that steady hand. And each one may feel tiny, even, me saying answering a text, but they accumulate. And then by mid-afternoon, you've made hundreds of these tiny, minute decisions that had added up, and you feel so drained. And it's just the constant decision fatigue. So the most powerful thing that you can do is try to plan. When you have that energy, try to plan as much as your week as possible to reduce that cognitive load later on, to offset perhaps you not having the amount of energy that you have in this moment. So this is a simple weekly dashboard, and it's really laid out activities color coded by energy cost, green on low cost things, yellow for medium, red for the big ones or appointments, different social events, or perhaps medical appointments, or even family members visiting, family or friends visiting. And I know some people are like, well, that's a great thing. I would love my family to visit, but sometimes that can be costly in and of itself. So, really trying to navigate and maintain your boundaries if it's not a good day or if it's not a good time. You really want to try to scatter your reds around. So, say you have the doctor's appointment on Tuesday. That's not grocery shopping day or family dinner on Saturday. Saturday morning, stay quiet. So, spread out the expensive things across the week and build that breathing room around them. So, in practice, Sunday evening, 5 minutes, that's all. Just look at the week. What's locked in? What obligations do I have? Put those first and try to fill around them with intention. Your most important tasks go into your highest energy windows, and then your low cost activities land on the days after the big ones. And the empty spaces, leave them empty. We don't have to have a booked out week. Just keep the low cost activities so they land on the days after the big ones. And that's just going to be your go-to. An open block on Wednesday afternoon isn't wasted time. Just think of it as kind of an investment for yourself for Thursday to have a little bit more energy and a little bit more breathing room for, events that might pop up that day. So most of us, like I mentioned earlier, we don't stop at 30%. We stop at zero. And when our body makes that decision for us, when we're kind of just so drained where we just crash on the couch, we veg out, your rest might look different. It could be vegging out on Netflix or doom scrolling or engaging in these activities that feel like rest. While there's something in reserve, your nervous system can settle back to baseline, but not so much when you're doing these things that feel like rest, but aren't really rest. So what does that mean? So you want to pace your day, and that means resting before you feel like you need to, which goes against everything that we've absorbed about productivity. And even if that means, oh, Caterina, but you told me to make this calendar and I had my red plan for this day. But if you don't have the energy for it, shift it around. It's not a big deal. Nothing is concrete. You do what works for you and your body. Your recovery becomes part of your structure of your day and nothing that is forced upon you. So, what that looks like is starting a ratio, and you can do 2 units of effort, one of recovery. So, that looks like 20 minutes of focus activity followed by 10 minutes of a brain break. And like I mentioned, the ratio is going to be flexible. Some days require 1 to 1, while others stretch 3 to 1. The numbers matter less than the principle, and that's too much to brain anyway. So just think, okay, if I took, this amount of time having a phone call, I just need to take 10 minutes to myself. So when you say, what is a brain break? Katerina, you're telling me if I'm on my phone, that's not really rest. So what does that look like? Because a brain break sounds differently until you sit down to take one and find yourself staring at a wall thinking, am I doing this right? Like, is this what a brain break is? Like, my brain is too busy and I'm unable to feel at rest. So, what your brain needs is low sensory input. The simplest thing you can do is close your eyes. So, even now in this training, I know I'm going a mile a minute and I'm giving you a lot of information. And if you're feeling like it's too much, close your eyes. You want to reduce the sensory input. The simplest thing you can do for your brain is reducing your visual field. The screen, the light, the texture on the wall, whatever's on the counter, the moment you shut your eyes, all of that processing stops. So it's really the fastest way to give that prefrontal cortex a break, and it doesn't cost anything. So if you can, like I mentioned, the phones, place your phone in another room, not flipped over on the couch next to you. I know it's really hard to relax and pick it up and look at the time and think, gosh, have I been resting for 10 minutes? How long has it been? You might feel a little bit antsy trying to have that forced rest. But research shows that even a silenced phone within arm's reach keeps your attention system on alert. So when you move it out of that space, your quality of rest changes. And then from there, it's about finding your version, stepping outside, getting some fresh air, sitting in a quiet room with nothing happening, instrumental music. You do what works best for you and your brain, but I do advise to step away from the phone. When I say do what works for you and your brain, I know TikTok and social media, they're really easy. It's a lot of input all at once. So just try to put it down to have a brain break. So try it once, even tomorrow at the end of the day, just pay attention to whether you're still having something left when the evening comes. So we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, is modifying your environment and your physical design. Sitting tasks that don't require standing can reduce the energy cost, and that adds up over the day. And while I am definitely an advocate for standing up, you don't have to do it all the time. Same task, same result. It's less strain just from pulling up a stool. So this can extend to folding laundry, brushing your teeth, phone call. Again, we talked about pacing, just sit down, relax your nervous system, reduce the energy that's being expended. And then your sensory environment. So your brain's filtering system runs differently. And things that used to fade into the background, like we mentioned earlier, like the fridge or the hum or the TV, the overhead lights, are still requiring the active processing. Your brain is spending the energy managing the environment before you even start. So when you dim the lights or you wear noise canceling headphones at the store, which I am an advocate for, I have to have my headphones on at the store. Or you ask your family to turn down the TV because it's too much going on at once. Maybe you feel like you can't think. And again, that kind of begins to build this frustration of, you're asked a question, but there's too much input coming in from different places all at once. And it seems like this explosion, but it's been building up the whole time. So really just trying to be mindful of your environment and your space. I love to keep your most used items within arm's reach. The grocery store, try going early in the morning or a weeknight when it's quiet and use a cart for 3 or more items, just to again reduce that cognitive load. At a family gathering, find a calm corner and sit with your back against the wall so your brain isn't tracking what's behind you. And then give yourself permission to step outside if the noise is building up too much. And no one needs to know why or a reason. Just take that quiet space and just, regain that energy back, even just for 5 minutes. At a medical appointment, you can schedule your energy window. So again, if you feel like you're going to be more energetic in the mornings, try and schedule it for the morning. Have someone drive if you have someone who can drive you to appointments. And of course, write down any questions or concerns prior to reduce that cognitive load. And each of these adjustments, they're all private. You don't have to tell anyone that you're doing them. No one has to know. And each one really gives your brain a little bit more energy for you to focus on the things that you care about. So everything that we just covered, the pacing, the planning, the positioning, all of it depends on one thing, knowing where you are before you cross the line. After the injury, that internal monitoring kind of runs on that delay, that lag. So the warning system should say, you're getting a little low. Often the fire doesn't happen until you've already snapped at someone or collapsed on the couch without even remembering how you got there. So we build it back deliberately with something simple enough for a tired brain to do. So I want you to ask yourself 3 questions, 3 times a day, morning, midday, and afternoon. What's my energy, 1 to 10? Don't argue with the number. Don't think, oh, I'm feeling a little bit, but I can't always be a 2 or I can't always be a 3. Don't be honest with yourself. 2, what's my irritability? Am I feeling edgy? Am I calm? Am I feeling close to the edge? How am I feeling in this moment? And 3, what do I need right now? Not what should I do, not what do I need to do, but what do you need in this moment? And again, if it's something that your partner or a loved one can assist you with, make that ask. Again, reduce the cognitive load and try to keep your internal dashboard right there in the middle or as low as possible. And the warning signs are really sneaky. reading the same line 3 times and nothing sticks, or maybe the sounds feel sharp. If I'm talking right now and if you feel like, oh my gosh, this is too much, or her voice is making me feel some kind of way, making those decisions are really hard. Like choosing what to eat or, I don't know, asking a request. It feels like too much. And one thing that people don't realize is, once you start rushing and speeding up and moving faster, it's not energy that's going to really start to crash out your nervous system. So, what I would like you to do, if you choose, you can close your eyes. And if that's not comfortable, that's okay. You can just soften your gaze, look away from the screen, give your eyes a nice brain break, and then ask yourself, what is your energy right now? And then give it a number. How are you feeling in this moment? And you can just sit with it. You can throw it in the chat. What's your irritability? Are you feeling calm? Are you feeling, like your nervous system has had a really long day? Or are you feeling a little bit closer to the red? And then what are you needing right now? Are you needing to turn off your camera? Are you needing to, again, soften your gaze and not look at the screen because it's a lot to look at a screen for a solid 30 minutes? So just sit with those numbers. And when you do this regularly, you can start to recognize these patterns. Like I mentioned earlier, your energy might dip around 2, your irritability might spike after the phone calls, and mornings might be your gold zone. So the information is so powerful. And once you really start to understand it or keep a journal or just, again, sit with those numbers daily, you can really start to build a pattern around how to map out your week or your day. Because when your battery drops, you know, that quick snap or that disproportionate frustration, you may feel like it's unreasonable or like you can't stop it. Or maybe you might hear like, gosh, Caterina, you've changed. Like you're a different person. It's just, it's biological. And I know that doesn't give any kind of resolution, but really just trying to be mindful of that dashboard light when it comes on before that internal engine overheats. And when you start reading it that way, it becomes more along the lines of asking yourself what you need, either for yourself or your partners or caregivers. And when you see that irritability, try to meet it with curiosity instead of reaction. So for your partners, instead of, why are you being like this? Why are you kind of just going off, the lid just out of nowhere? It's not out of nowhere. Really start asking, what do you need? And ask that question with warmth and again, that genuine curiosity, because your calm, steady, regulated presence helps their nervous system. It's that co-regulation. And it's really one of the most powerful things that you can offer. So a simple script for, when words might feel hard for everyone is, are you at yellow or red? Or do you need quiet? Do you need food? Do you need a break? And sometimes don't ask at all. Give that person space. If you feel like after the first question, they're even more irritated, just take that step back and walk away and come back when they're ready to. So what's happening when the signal comes too late? When you're already in the middle of the reaction, those sharp words are already coming out and the frustration is boiling over and you haven't had a chance to choose anything. It goes straight from there's a fire to I'm saying things that I'm going to regret later on and I might be sleeping on the couch. I don't know. It's really a matter of having a chance to choose. And you can do this with pacing and even with planning. And there will be moments when the smoke detector fires and that steady hand is nowhere to be found. So when you look at the bridge, you can see on one side the trigger. So that might be a loud noise or a comment from your partner, or a kiddo asking the same question for 7 times and maybe you're feeling not so patient that day. Or maybe nothing at all. There could be no initial trigger, just a feeling of intense um, emotions and big feelings, and that's okay. just the accumulated weight of the day. And then on the other side is the response. So whatever was about to come out, and that bridge between them is one breath. So when you feel the surge and you do one thing, try to name it. I notice I'm reacting. And it sounds really simple, but just giving yourself kind of a script to go to of, I notice I'm reacting, silently or out loud. You don't have to understand it or fix it, just name it and take a breath. And that slower exhale signals your nervous system kind of on a downshift. And in that window, you'll have just enough time to flicker that hand back online. Just enough to give you a little sliver of choice between an automatic reaction and something a little bit more intentional or thoughtful, like, I need space, or please just give me 5 minutes. Um, and and that's it. And that's all you have to do. Which again, I know in theory sounds way easier than when you're in the moment. And another thing that works is some people find a physical anger helps. So hand on your chest. You might see me doing this a lot during training because this helps to co-regulate me. Hand on my chest, feeling my heartbeat, putting your feet on the ground, pressing against the floor. Something textured. I have a nice heavy blanket on my lap. Um, Also, a Nido for textile stimulation. So do what works for your brain. Give your brain different sensory data to process, something neutral or something to be present. I know that my husband, he likes walking around with a clip, one of my hair clips in his pocket to clip back and forth. And it works just as kind of like okay, I just need a clip. I need to take a breath. I need to take a moment. So just do what works for you. Find what works and roll with it. And if you haven't found what works for you, I implore you to continue to just try different strategies. So these moments are going to happen. You're going to kind of go off the rails. And again, loved ones might say something along the lines of, you changed, you're different, you're not the same person. But really, it just comes back to taking that pause. And it's normal to feel guilt or feel bad about it, or perhaps wish that you address things differently. But the reaction is a brain running on empty, and the remorse is you. So every time that you practice that pause, even, one set of 10, you're building a neural pathway, making it easier for your brain to find that bridge next time. And that percentage will grow and it'll improve, and you may not have to be so intentional about thinking about the pause, that it will just come naturally. So here are some hacks for daily living. Here are some more specific things. It's more so a menu. So feel free to choose one thing that saves you energy and ignore the rest for now. There's a lot of words on this screen, and I'm not a fan of slides with a lot of words, so I apologize in advance. But you can always come back to these. Reggie will send these out and just choose one thing. Try it out. For instance, buying pre-chopped, pre-washed ingredients. If you feel more energetic in the morning on a Sunday, try to batch your cooking. Make a big pot of something on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday to where you could just heat it up. Really, just that extra time will save you and your energy throughout the week. And again, we kind of already talked about shopping, going off-peak hours, blue light filters on every screen. This is something that I love to do. Turn off every notification. You don't need every ping. Again, take a step away. Put that phone on silent if you can. And then match your screen time to the pacing ratio. So 20 minutes on and then 10 off. And you can set a gentle alarm if you feel like maybe time slips away. And then for the people that you love and the conversations and the connection, those are some of the most cognitively expensive things you can do. And in theory, it doesn't sound like it. Oh, I'm talking with a girlfriend, but maybe that costs more to you than going to a medical appointment. So, processing language, reading faces, again, filtering the noise, text, you don't have to make that call. Feel free to shoot a text if that works best for you. You can leave gatherings early, decide before you go that leaving early is the plan. Communicate with your partner. We're going to be here about 30 to 45 minutes, and I'm going to be maxed out of my social battery. You can come up with a code word with your partner or your close friends that means something like, I need to go, or a look. My husband does this a lot. He'll, he'll give me this side of Caterina, my social battery is out of here and I'm ready to go. So just do what works for you. And my son, he has a code word. It's hoo-hoo, and it's an owl, and he'll shoot me an owl text of I'm ready, like I'm ready to be picked up. So just code words, no one needs to know. It doesn't have to be something big like, oh, I'm just really not feeling well today. Just do what works for you. But they compound, and I know these sound nominal, like, oh, you know, again, this doesn't feel like it's going to do much. But the person who made 20 small adjustments throughout the day arrives in the evening with a little bit more capacity than the person who powered through. And that leftover energy can be, an extra conversation with your partner, or doing something that you love, doing a hobby, or even just taking a quiet moment before bed with yourself just to relax and unwind without being maxed out for the whole day. So, from pushing through to pacing, your brain is asking for a different rhythm, and really taking, you know, really listening to that and really responding to what you need takes courage. From reacting to planning, when you scatter the heavy things instead of stacking them, or when you decide the night before, so your morning brain doesn't have to, you're giving yourself those choices. And those choices mean that you're running your day instead of your day running you. And like I mentioned, I know you might carry guilt, and I hear it a lot in the groups that I sit with. Guilt for not feeling as you were before, or guilt for needing the rest, or to have a code word, or to leave early, or canceling plans, or again, losing patience with someone you love. Um, I'm not going to tell you not to feel guilty. Your feelings are always valid, but everything that we talked about today, the healing that runs around the clock, that steady hand running the manual control on the systems that used to be automatic. I mean, it's there and it's valid, but you have support and you have different strategies that you can implement or use. You have various support groups, and these classes are wonderful and they're great. And I implore you to go to Brain Northwest and check out the rest of the classes. But really, the gap between what your brain can do right now and what the world expects is kind of where that guilt lives. And I don't want you to measure yourself against a standard that doesn't account for the invisible work that your brain is doing. It's kind of like running a marathon with a weighted vest and then maybe feeling bad about not being able to keep up with the rest who aren't wearing one. So if you take one thing from today, it would be the permission to let go of that guilt, because just enough to wonder, it's not also so terrible. What if your brain is doing extraordinary work under extraordinary conditions? Because it is. And I know that it doesn't feel like it. But, even you guys showing up here today, you're doing great work. So before we close, again, just think about, everything that we discussed, the 4 Ps, the traffic light, the 2-1 ratio, the pause, the pie chart, really spending it on what matters and deciding when you're tired to try to stop at that 30%. Make the environment do the work for you instead of the other way around. So try to pick one of these strategies if you can. And then on the screen, you'll see some resources here. And again, these will be sent out to you for your review. So just try one strategy. Maybe it's a brain break, 20 minutes on, 20 minutes off. But on the important note is to, which I should absolutely caveat, is if you are experiencing sudden symptoms like major sleep collapse or seizure-like episodes, please loop in your medical team, everything that we talked about today. Pacing is not a substitute for medical evaluation. So take care of yourself and the whole picture. Take care of yourselves this week and be generous with your brains. And that is all for today.
I'm going to stop the recording of this gorgeous class and let people ask some questions. Just a moment, everyone.